This is episode. Hello and welcome to Identirati Office Hours. This is episode 36. And the topic today is deepfakes, what is BioID's combat strategy? And I have guests, Ann and co-host Pavel today. So welcome, guys.
Hi, Mike.
Hello.
And just a quick reminder for everyone to follow Identirati Office Hours on LinkedIn. We're trying to get to 1,000 followers. And I guess before we dive into today's topics on deepfake, maybe the guests could introduce themselves. Ann, can you give us a quick introduction?
Yes, sure. So my name is Ann-Kathrin Freiberg. I'm working at BioID in Nuremberg, Germany. And I actually started my career at Fraunhofer Institute in the technology marketing field, which is also what brought me to BioID at some point. I started there in 2017, first overlooking the marketing and communication department, and then moving into sales and business development more and more with the years. And so now I'm supporting customers and product marketing or product management, actually. And I'm supporting customers with integration projects for identity verification processes and everything that involves biometrics, because BioID develops biometric technology. And yeah, so I'm happy to be here today. Thanks for the invitation, Mike.
And Pavel, how do you find yourself on an Identirati Office Hours episode?
Yeah, hello, Mike. Thanks. So my background is always within cybersecurity and identity, and since last 25 years, I have been continuously challenged with more like transformation of a larger systems to become leaner and more secure. I'm coming with mathematic background in the past, so I have been studying math and financial sector, public sector. Lately, I exposed myself to a topic of getting more familiar with what open source can do on identity and access management space. Maybe also to mention, I have got familiar with neural networks in past century already, so I'm really looking forward for that discussion here. And AI generally is really, is gonna be quite a game changer for us in the future. It's also for identity market. Looking forward.
So that's a good bridge to our conversation today. Thank you, Pavel. AI has obviously created a lot of new challenges for server-side biometric authentication. But before we dive into that, just to give the audience a little bit of context, Ann, could you maybe just help us, just walk through the basics of what BioID does and what the service and the product is?
Yeah, sure. So we developed a software that includes facial recognition and fraud prevention for facial recognition systems. These are used for authentication and verification. And well, you need to make sure that you actually interact with the person that you think you're interacting with. So you need to be sure there's no deepfake or other fraud, like a picture or video of the person trying to log on to a bank account or open a door for physical access. And so we offer these types of services. So facial recognition, liveness detection, and also photo verify, which is for identity verification processes where you want to be sure that an ID document actually belongs to the person that's submitting it. And so this is like the broad range of biometric technologies that we developed here in Nuremberg.
So the obvious question with all the AI innovation is, how has AI had an impact on the user experience? Has there been any, or what has to happen in order to keep that user experience the same?
Yeah, the technology that we're working on is almost purely AI at this point. It was not 10 years ago. We have some really capable people in our team that used to handcraft algorithms to do facial recognition, because that's what you used to do. But at some point, the neural networks took over. You can say that, because we had the best ever created handcrafted algorithms compared to the new neural networks, and they were 20 times better. So it was not nice for our engineers who did the software development, but it was the truth that AI was much more capable, especially in the image processing field. And so today, all of or most of the technology that we provide is based on our AI that is trained with our own data. And then you need to make sure, of course, that you consider lots of things if you want to train a good system to, for instance, distinguish live images from fake images. And so, yeah, AI is everywhere in my field.
Pavel, are you surprised by this?
Not at all. And I mean, actually surprised by the length, how much it took time for us to adopt neural networks in the larger industry. And that's actually the speed AI is right now getting implemented in different dimension. That is what is surprising me. But how long did it took from the invention of neural network? That is still surprising me. So to me, the process was rather long.
Yeah, our CTO always tells the story that he used to work at Fraunhofer Institute, which is a research institute in Germany. And back in 1995, he was already working in the group that was called artificial intelligence. So it was already there, but it was not capable like it is today. Like we didn't have the machines, you didn't have the technology, and you didn't have like certain adaptions that they invented at some point. And so there was artificial intelligence before, but it was not useful enough. So now at this point, lots of things have changed, especially the capability of the machines. And so now you can use AI as we do it today. So it was there, but it was not yet capable enough.
So you need a lot of data to train the AI. What kind of impact did one of the things that the selling points of BioID was always GDPR compliance?
Yes.
Now that you're collecting more data, did that create any new challenges for you on the processing analytical side?
Yeah, always, of course, because you need to be sure you comply with the EU AI Act, with GDPR, with personal rights, and so on, especially as a German company. But that's the good thing about being in the business for such a long time. We really have our own databases and huge, massive ones. We're also constantly working on enlarging them. Like we have a huge deepfake database at this point because we started to create it 3 years ago. So we have the same for like a paper mask database. We have our own silicon masks. We actually have a 3D printer and create our own masks. And so that's the good thing about being in the market for such a long time, that you have the time to build up these like databases and the capabilities to create fakes yourself. I always say that we're kind of like almost as good fraudsters as we are in preventing fraud, but of course we're not on the bad side, we're on the good side.
Pavel, if I could put you on the spot as somebody who's more in touch with like the end users, how do customers feel about server-side biometric authentication? Because is it something that they want, or are they concerned? Are there any concerns around privacy or other reasons why they might not adopt it?
Well, maybe even Ann can answer that better, but I can give it my perspective first. So to me, I think this is a bit of topic of the policy, adopted policy for individual customers. And not only policies, but, the overall, if you want, IT strategy. If you are investing into server side or more like on-prem solutions, how much you want to regain the control versus how quickly you want to adopt certain technologies. So I do not really believe there is a universal answer to that. And it will be like a case by case. But what is important that, you have a really right match between your product, what Ann is offering on the market, and also the customer. So you really, really need to feel your customer. But I believe there will be, as much as we are here, there will be different perspectives on what you need to prioritize and what kind of strategy you will follow. But I would be very interested in listening what's Ann experienced so far.
Yeah.
So maybe before we dive into the tech, I was sorry, Ann, you can answer this that question and this one too, maybe. So maybe the same question is, what are who are the customers who are saying server-side authentication is something that we are interested in? Maybe are there any commonalities or groups of those types of customers?
Yeah, I think I would answer the question other way around, like who needs on-prem? Because if possible, like almost everyone would probably choose software as a service because it's so much easier for everyone to use. But there are regulations for banks and governments that just don't allow to use any software or as a service or any like internet connected service. And so they need on-prem. So I think the question is who needs on-prem? It's the ones that are regulated, and for instance, that's governments and banks. And so most of our customers that want to have on-prem are either directly working with the government, they are governments, or they're financial institutions. All
Interesting.
others would probably prefer the software as a service solution.
So BioID actually does more business in on-prem than in cloud?
No, we're generally a software as a service provider.
Yeah.
Most of our customers use the software as a service element that we have. But
I
some
see.
of our customers have like special requirements, and then they would go for on-prem.
I see. Yeah, I would have been really surprised if the cloud wasn't most of it. Interesting. Well, we prepared some cool videos. It's always good to see something. Maybe could you tell us a little bit about what type of techniques you're using in order to stay ahead of, hopefully, attackers for server-side biometrics?
Yeah, sure. So you're referring to the deepfake videos, I guess. So maybe I should first talk about deepfakes as
Yeah,
well. Yeah. So the latest fraud attempt type that we saw were deepfakes. In the last years, the development was like crazy. You need huge computers or machines to create a convincing deepfake, and only professionals can do it with lots of data, like millions of images. To now you have free apps that anyone can use. You need only one picture of the person, and then you can create a deep fake, like a 30-second video of someone dancing or, well, saying something they would never say and things like that. So that's
yeah.
where we're at now. And this
Better than
development,
Jib Jab.
it was only like two to 3 years, this development. So it's really crazy. And so that's why we decided to have this element, like fraud prevention for deepfakes in particular, as part of our liveness detection. Liveness detection is the standard type of anti-spoofing, like presentation attack detection is the other term for it. If you have a biometric system, you want to make sure that the sensor is not presented with a fake. It could be like a mask, a picture, or now we know it could also be a deepfake. And so that's why we added a deepfake detection to the liveness detection part. And I can show you a deepfake that was created with only one image of me. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go. So
Okay.
there's a small
Yeah.
collection. I hope you can see the video starting in a second. So this is a deepfake video created of me with only one image. And that's with a free app. So it was not even that we had to pay for it. And the thing is that, of course, I would not like show myself like that. I don't have these hairstyles. I never had. And I wouldn't do this kind of mimic and things like that. But it's really convincing, especially if you don't know about deepfakes. If you do, you can have a look at the eyes and sometimes at the chin. I can maybe replay it. Then you would actually see, I can try to replay it. Here, I can show it again. Look at the eyes and the glasses and the teeth, because this is like the thing that AI sometimes is not, or generative AI is not so good at, or deepfake technology. So if you want to like detect a deepfake with the bare eye, you want to have a look at these things like eyes, glasses, sometimes the chin if a person moves, and the teeth, because sometimes they are not so realistic. But if you wouldn't talk about deepfakes at this point, and you wouldn't think that it could be a deepfake that you see, you would probably think this is me in a funny video. And it can be funny, it can be entertaining, but to be honest, I could also be doing things I don't want to be doing, and then this could be published. Like I could be saying things that I wouldn't say, for instance, or it could be used, a video of mine that says, yes, I want to open a bank account with bank XYZ because that's what some banks need as an like remote identity proving element to open a bank account, I could create a video of any of you within a few seconds and you say that. So that's like the fraud element that you can think of as soon as you have technology that creates things like these. And so maybe I can show you a quick video of, this is the same video, but now a heat map overlay showing where our algorithms detect the fake elements or the fraud elements. So we, with our deepfake detection, analyze certain frames of a video, and then we see, or the AI that we trained sees where this image is fake or where the frames are fake and that they are fake. And so this is just like an example for you to see how this could look like. Okay. Yeah. So
Pavel, any thoughts?
yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. It's always nice to see the visualizations. I don't know, Pavel, any thoughts on that?
I just automatically started to feel, how do you measure the performance in terms of false positive and false negative? So, what's your feedback taking, like in order to improve your algorithm and the product? So what are you building surrounding the product development and consumption in order to make you better?
Yeah, that's actually a good question, because there's no standard so far for deepfake detection. Like for liveness detection, there's a standard. It's ISO 30107, and you can actually be tested against the standard. But for deepfake detection, it's so new, there is no international standard or like something you could test against. So you need to do your own tests all the time. Our team is actually like looking into the technology every day. We check new apps, new technologies, and we create new deepfakes almost every day and train them into our systems. And you need to be sure that you don't start to like reject the legitimate users, of course. And that's the good thing, that we have a huge amount of live images as well. So we always have to like balance out with our own databases or data sets, that we have the right level of deepfake and live images. And then we need to make sure that, of course, the systems are balanced out very well, because we don't want to stop any legitimate user from using a system. So it's hard work, and it's like an ongoing task. It's not like we have this service now and we all lay back and sell it. It's more like you are in a continuous research and development phase. And it's been the same for liveness detection. We introduced that 10 years ago, and it's still not finished. You always need to keep on like adding new fraud elements, adding new computer displays, cell phones, whatever. Like there's new technology all the time that you need to evaluate and make sure that you're secured against. And so I think there's no like best company for this topic. It's more like you need a really dedicated team. You need to be sure that the company you're buying a technology from is really standing behind that and really working hard for it, because that's currently the solution to solving the deepfake problem, because there is no benchmark or standard that you could say, yeah, we're fulfilling the standard or something. It's more like do the best you can with all the efforts you can.
Yeah, that's a good answer. But Mike, I would like to actually ask one simple question to Ann as well. But Ann, are you, in terms of visibility and let's say transparency of the product, are you public on the performance of the product in terms of false negatives and false positives? Right. I mean, those are your time, and are you open to publish that statistic or provide it, or this is more like kept internally right now?
Yeah, I mean, this is like in constant change, of course, but we're normally at around 95% detecting the deep fakes. And that's on internal databases. So there's no official one that I could say someone can compare to. But that's also like the benchmark on the market is around 90%. That's what we can see from the research. And so we're really happy with the 95, but it's far from 99 point something, which you normally aim at. But that's because the development is still ongoing. It's not a finished technology. So for liveness detection, this is different. We're far beyond the 99%. But for the deepfake technology, 95 is really good. And then you always need to make sure that you're not like, as I said, stopping the legitimate users. And so you need to be sure to have a good balance there.
Right. Thanks.
And so I'm just having a hard time seeing how all this data that you're collecting in order to do this AI training and adapt is not somehow reversible as personal data.
Yeah, I mean, if it comes to reversible, the AI networks, you put lots of data in, and it's not like you can take them out after that. Like the training is like a very complex method. And then afterwards, the images are not in that net or can be taken out, kind of. And so I think that's what you're
Okay,
referring
so you
to, right?
process
So
them and then you chuck them.
yeah, if I'd give you this net now, it wouldn't help you much concerning the images that we originally put in. And so, but I wouldn't give out the net, of course, because this is like the core element of BioID.
And what do you see as the biggest growth areas? Is it eKYC for banks, or what is there a business purpose that where you see a lot of demand?
You mean particularly for the deepfake detection?
Yeah, for remote identity proofing. I mean, actually, you're right. So we have authentication and the remote identity proofing part. But I guess for remote identity proofing, yeah, are you seeing like in the eKYC for financial applications or government, or where do you see sort of in the vertical segment, like maybe more business cases for this type of server-side biometric authentication and identification?
Yeah, I think saying that eKYC is very important is definitely right, but I see that governments are kind of moving into this field as well. They're getting more digital finally, and border control is also something that's starting to get more digital. I know that some countries are like much further than Germany, for instance, but I think those are like the governments are now moving into this field, so border control and all like governmental services. This is getting more important. So fintech, of course, and banking, but also governments are, if you ask about growth potential, I think it's border control and governmental services. And we have this really interesting use case for like pension administration. So people have to verify that they're still alive because there's so much fraud with pensioners that are not alive anymore, but people still get the pension from the government. And you can't really ask a 90-year-old lady to go into the capital every 3 months live. And so there's this service that uses our technology that they verify that they're still alive and they're still there, and then they get the pension. So that makes a lot of sense. And it's also a governmental service. So it helps prevent fraud and reduce like fraudulent payments. That's also a good one, I guess.
Interesting. Pavel, have you seen any in real life deployments of server-side biometrics?
Well, as a customer myself, as an end consumer, yes, for sure. And there has been quite convenient, from my perspective, there has been quite convenient cases where I really, as an end consumer, I can see the speed up of the process for consuming services which are crucial to me. So, of course, I did, and I can recognize, let's say, the value. Not talking about the threats, but the value I can recognize. However, I had another question to Ann. Meanwhile,
Yes,
we have been, for a decade or two, living in quite liberal world in terms of internet, and it has been quite interconnected or hyper-connected even. Nowadays, we have certain trends of building up sovereignty for internet. So internet is not really now super common, but having some tendency to isolate. So from your business perspective, how much you are challenged with this tendency of having sovereignty for internet here and there?
I'm not completely sure I understood the question. Maybe could you rephrase it or just give me a little more context?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we have some very, extreme examples like Russia or China building up certain sovereignty. So do you have problems offering the products beyond European Union, right? So do you have any kind of geopolitical borders for your, for building up your business, or you feel like international in terms of offerings?
So any concerns about sovereignty or data sovereignty? because we see, especially, is training data and is an AI model, does that need to conform to data sovereignty considerations? Is that
Yeah,
the question, Pavel?
One off, but that would be also
yeah,
interesting.
What's the other part?
The other part is, getting the clients in, like beyond the border, if you want.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So we actually have customers all over the world, and the thing is that we work with Microsoft Azure, and you can have data centers located in certain areas of the world. So we have one in Hong Kong, one in USA, we have one in Europe, of course, and it depends on, and in South Africa, for instance. So it depends on the customers where they want their data to be processed. And so our South African customers, of course, want their data in South Africa, and that's where it stays. So our BWS, our BioID web service, then runs in this South African instance, and all the data that's coming in is only processed within the South African data center. And that's how we do it in those cases. And then, of course, on-prem is an option if it's really important that all the data stays maybe within one country or within one company, then on-prem is the solution.
Yeah, I want to pick up something on you said before, that because this technology is so rapidly evolving, that that when a company buys a product like BioID, you're really betting on that team to keep innovating at a certain rate that's sufficient to stay, at pace with or ahead of hackers. But can you talk a little bit more about sort of how has that sort of impacted the business and how you build the business there at BioID?
You mean the technological advancements in the last?
Yeah, or just the challenges around the fact that it's really a moving target that you're going after. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it results in some of our people, including our CTO, working too much. Because you can never really like relax and lay back or something. Yeah, I feel like I already answered that a little bit when I described that you kind of need to stay on the topic all the time. So as I said, like we never lean back and just sell what we have. We're always in the research of the next step. So 3 years ago, we already started to do the deepfake detection research within actually a funded project funded by the German government. And we're so happy that we started so early, because back then it was not really clear that the threat would be that huge like it is right now. But the question back then was, how could you use material, video and photo material in front of court or in court if you are not sure it was not manipulated? So that was the original question of this research project. And it then resulted in creating deepfake detection, because if you want to check material, like on a platform in real time, whether or not it was fake or it is fake or real, then that's what you need, kind of. And the original idea was to use material in court, but now we're somewhere completely else. Like it's more about stopping impersonation. It's about maybe if it's about porn, for instance, you want to stop porn misuse, and you want to have the chance to analyze big amounts of data and without a human having to do it. And so that's where the platform comes in, and you can actually just upload videos or photos and have the check done automatically. And that makes much more sense today. And so there's a vast possibilities of using such deepfake detection, not just in the identity field, actually. It's more about stopping fake news, for instance, and stopping political manipulation. Like I think you see that in the US, that you have lots of political discussions, let's put it that way. And it's pretty much possible that someone decides to create a fake video of someone in the political field and tries to, crash their reputation. And then you want to be sure that this material is real or not, especially before you share it or something. Like if I was Facebook CEO, I would definitely have a look into this, because I don't want my platform to provide fake news material, and then maybe the voting is not as intended in the end.
Do you think that the deepfake detection part of the business might actually eclipse the original, biometric authentication piece? Like,
No, I think it's an add-on. It's like another arm, kind of, because authentication is a use case that will always be there. Like I restarted to talk about physical access using facial recognition, and for me, this was like an old shoe. This is something we would say in German. I don't know how you say it in English. It was like I thought no one's so interested because it's like the original use case. Physical access control using facial recognition is the original use case from 20 years ago. And so I thought no one would really be interested in that one, but the interest was great. It was like a lot of people were asking about it. And so you see that it's always developing and always depends on how good something is. And I think deepfake detection as a product per se is another product, but it's also part of the authentication fraud prevention. So it's already integrated in the standard products, and it can also be a product per se, but it's not going to take over all BioID business. It's more like an important add-on.
I think tying biometrics to physical access control is really interesting. We had Sentry on, and they have a card. It's a FIDO card, but it also has an RFID antenna and a fingerprint sensor. And you need to present the biometric at the door to unlock. But they mentioned that every door that has one of those locks also has a video camera, because people share keys, and so you could actually do both. You could both surveil with video and use the physical card. I want to go back to something that you mentioned previously about border control. So is the idea that a citizen would enroll in this, and when they show up at the border, they would authenticate using the previous enrollment? You're not talking about identification at the airport to identify people. You're talking about citizens actually enrolling and then using the server-side biometric authentication at the border.
Yeah,
Are any countries doing that?
It's a new concept that's planned here in the EU. And it's exactly that. You kind of pre-enroll at home with an app, and you already upload your documents and so on, and you already take a selfie, or maybe it's a video, still needs to be decided. And then if you are at the airport or whatever, it's much quicker and easier. It's like you do a pre-registration kind of. And it's also, of course, easier to, see where people are moving around, but it's not about surveillance or something. More helping the processes, because there's lots of people waiting sometimes at border control, and it's also supporting with machines in that case makes sense, because humans make mistakes, especially if they get tired, or let's say they are just used to having the same person in front of them, like is on the ID. They're just used to that, so they expect it. And then they always say, it's the same one, but it's not, or there's like a morph or something.
Yeah, humans are the weakest link, actually.
Yeah, you can't detect a morph with the bare eye, unless you're maybe a super recognizer, but you can with machines. So that's just a use case where it really makes sense to have support. And then having people enroll at home is nice for them, and it makes processes quicker and more secure at the border.
Are any countries actually doing this?
I'm not like an expert on that. I can't answer it at this point. I just know that this is the plan for EU, and that we also have this EU ID coming up, and we're trying to harmonize the whole thing, so that private companies are not doing all the identity verification stuff, and it's more like a standard kind of for this identity verification process.
Are you also? Yeah, maybe.
Go ahead, Pavel, please.
One spontaneous question. And are you also thinking on some kind of a healthcare use cases, like maybe looking into the face and identifying certain disease, or really cooperating with medical institutions on a bit different level of use cases for your technology?
Diagnostic. Different model, right?
Yeah, the diagnostics is nothing that we would look into, because this is also highly restricted, and that's like a different field. But what I can think about when it comes to healthcare, or a use case that we have, is that there's a lot of misuse in, I think it's India, where people walk into hospitals and pretend they are a certain person, and then they get treated, but they didn't have insurance. And they just said the wrong name or presented something that made the people in the hospital think that they are a certain person, and then no one pays because this person was not insured, and the person that the insurance was running on was not treated. And so the hospitals have a lot of problems with that because they are not paid in the end. They are the ones who have the financial issues then. And so you have a kiosk there, you have to walk into the hospital, the kiosk helps verify that you're the person that you're actually saying you are and that you are insured. And the good thing in India is that you have this Aadhaar system, you have like a database of all citizens, and so you can actually use this to verify that the person is who they say they are.
Right.
This is something that's not thinkable, not even like you can't consider doing something like that in the EU because of data privacy. But if there's something like that in place, that's a benefit in India, for instance.
Yeah, in fact, I think Aadhaar has.
But that's how you use it.
Yeah, say if we ignore this regulatory complexity which you just mentioned, do you recognize certain potential for this, healthcare use cases like diagnosing and things like that? If we just, skip for a second the complexity or regulatory thinking.
Yeah, image
So you go through customs, and then they're like, "Oh, hi, Mike. And by the way, you should get your eyes checked out. You might have glaucoma."
I mean, we're in a very
or COVID.
right?
Maybe you're at risk for COVID. Please see the. That's a big ask, I think, for BioID. But there are some things where they say, "Can my data be shared for medical use cases?" Because we've seen derivative data sets sometimes used by doctors or others for other research purposes. Would it ever become possible for you to share? Has anyone ever requested the data for research purposes?
Not that I have in mind right now, but to answer Pavel's question, for image processing, AI is the best thing that could happen. And if you have diseases that you can actually see, then you can definitely train an AI system for distinguishing a healthy person from a not healthy person. Like if there's signs in the face or in the eyes, like maybe whatever, yellow dots in the eyes or something that is much more invisible for the human eye, but it's visible for a machine, for instance, then it can be used like that. So your idea is great, and I'm sure there are some elements already in use. Like if you have blood that you can check visually, and then you have an AI system that can automatically decide, oh, this blood looks like there's cancer elements or whatever. And it's not about like the normal data that you get from blood. It's more like the visual element. So it's definitely something, I'm sure it's already done in some elements. And for the face, if there is something visible, some elements of the disease are visible on the skin or the hair or whatever, then it's definitely possible. You just need the data. You need lots of data of the not healthy persons, and then compare it to healthy people, and then you can actually do what you just proposed.
Yeah, I mean the reason
I'm sorry, Pavel, go ahead.
I mean, the reason for me asking that is, because I'm looking at that from two perspectives. One perspective that you have in infrastructure, right? You have some kind of commoditized technology, and then on commoditized technology, you can build up different products, right? So digital, remote identification is one use case, one product. The diagnosis could be another product, but you can still share the large portion of the commodity, which eventually will be, and then you can have different cross-feeding, of the things potentially, right, depending on the regulatory landscape. But this is more like an efficiency of you building up your product. And the second thing, why, the second reason behind why I was, like a little bit thinking into that direction, you always need to have a great sense of mission, right? And this, the healthcare of humanity is one of the great, what could be, that's one of the greatest things what we could have in terms of the mission, right? And that's pretty much where I was, coming with my question. But you have answered it very well. So
it's an interesting thought that the derivative value from something that you're already doing might be even greater than the thing that you're trying to do. I think, I was wondering the same. I did have another question and I forgot. Okay.
Maybe I can just
Yeah, I
jump in
remember.
and say that the mission that BioID is following is securing digital identities and creating trust online. I mean, when we started, the internet was just starting as well. It's 1998 that we started our business. So it was not our original use case to be securing digital identities and connecting physical, real people with their digital personas. But that's what we do right now. And we think it's really important because you want to have trust in all the interactions that you do online. And to be honest, so much is done online, like this video call, for instance. Like that's something you really want to be sure that you're interacting with the right people, especially if you think they're your boss and they're asking you to do something for them. You want to be sure they really are your boss. And that's where you need fraud prevention as well, for instance. And so this is the mission for us, is creating trust online and like securing digital identities. I think it's also important, but I agree, of course, healthcare is maybe even more honorable.
Yeah, it's a good question about the mission. And it sort of leads me, I remembered where I was going with this, which was we had another guest, Armando Pena from Dominican Republic. He's helping to build a digital public infrastructure for identity. And he said that one of the challenges that they have is they actually have a number of different citizen databases around, that people use to log in to do various things. But they're really having a hard time figuring out, they need just one record per person, right? And they're figuring out what's the best way to do that. And they were really seriously considering some type of server-side biometric authentication. But does that sort of, have you seen any other countries saying, maybe we need some way to identify citizens? And I think that, in the foundational identity layer, not, like, how do we know, we've seen approaches like verifiable credentials. You mentioned the EU wallets. But just at a certain point, you need to figure out, like, who are the people actually, the human beings in this country. And I know at least in DR, Armando saw server-side biometrics as a way to maybe get a number there. I don't know. Any thoughts, Anne, on that?
Yeah, I mean, you can do that without actually storing all the data, and that's what's done in the EU most of the time. Like, you can, of course, have a database. You can create biometric templates of people. So you teach a system how you look, and then you get a number, and this is your template stored. It can be a pseudonymized template, of course, but still there's a template stored. So later, when you want to authenticate, your fresh image is compared to that template. That's an option for logging on or using governmental services or opening doors. But you can do the same thing without storing anything if you have your ID document, and then you can read, for instance, the NFC chip, and there's an image on the NFC chip. And then you use that image and you create, you do the facial comparison with a live image and the NFC image that was stored on your ID document or your passport or something. And then you have the same level of verification without storing anything, because you can just like store the element, yes, this is the same person and the ID was valid and so on, but you don't have to store images, you don't have to store any templates or something. So that's what we see a lot. We see more now that it's one-time processes for verification. And then, well, if you want to do it again, like if you want to open a bank account again, you'll have to do that again. So what we see is that there's a development for wallets more. So there's this verified credential stored in the wallet, and then you just re-verify maybe by looking into the camera. It's a re-verification. You don't have to do all the process for just one element, but still you don't have to store a template somewhere, especially not at the government. So maybe that's what I see from my perspective.
Yeah, but you'll still need to, if you lose that wallet, you'll still need to do some type of account recovery, which is where having a server-side biometric could be useful, I would think.
Yeah, that makes sense, of course. So password reset in companies and generally definitely is a use case that we always promote, because we think it makes so much sense to use your face instead of using an RFID card or a colleague or whatever is normally done, or your email, because we know emails are weak links as well. Yeah, so password reset is one, but I think I forgot the original question. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Maybe this is a good place to wrap up, because we're hitting, we're right at the top. I'll give Anne the last words, but Pavel, any thoughts before we break? Final thoughts?
Great chat actually, and I wish Anne you further success in all the further developments, and you do great, guys. Thanks a lot.
Okay, I mean, Anne, last thoughts? Thank you for being a guest, but any last thoughts before we call it?
Yeah, I think it's important to see a holistic picture on this. Like it's not about just deepfakes. It's not about just authentication using facial recognition. It's more like we need to create a trusted environment for the whole authentication field. And one element of that can be facial recognition, and one is deepfake detection, but you always have to have the big picture in mind. And I think that we humans are super important concerning our awareness. So the awareness for fraud, the awareness for processes that make sense and context is super important. That's why I always like to describe what deepfakes are and how they are made and so on, because that helps the awareness, and then the humans can actually be part of the deepfake protection or of the fraud prevention. And so we are part of this creating trust online, of course. And so I think this is a remark I would like to say, that we humans should also take our responsibility very serious.
Awesome. Well, with that, thanks to the guests, thanks to the audience. Please follow Identity Office Hours on LinkedIn. And next week or next Thursday, we have Sam Goto from the Google Chrome team, who's going to talk about the rise of browser identity APIs, like the Passkeys API, the Verifiable Credential API, and also another API that Google's proposed to avoid cookies. So anyway, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for the invitation.